What is the scenario for you? Because I think that's Bradford's problem is he basically is it's out of his control now on what he can do to keep this position. So what kind of scenario would you see, Josh, that Bradford would be replaced?
I actually think he'll have a relatively long leash on the field. I think one thing that would hurt him and one thing that would make the Eagles want to pull him is if he seems maybe disinterested or just not trying to take the reins and be the leader. It's just I feel like as long as he resumes the role that he had at the end of last season in terms of off the field, the relationship with the teammates, if he can continue that, I think he'll have a longer leash. I think what would really hurt him is if he let this kind of situation have some type of lingering effect where, yeah, he's back in the building, he's doing what he needs to do, but he's not really doing anything more. He's not really trying to be the leader of the team. He's not trying to step up. So I think that's really what could hurt him more, because I think that they really do want to have him not just start for the season, but I also think they're better situated to have him start for the season, because although when you have these high draft picks come in, they typically start a lot sooner than I think Carson Wentz will eventually start. I think there's going to be a very clear gap between Carson Wentz and Sam Bradford. And I really think that they're going to not just want to sit him just because they want to, compete for the division and, do as well as they can. But they don't want to stunt his growth. I mean, he's coming from an FCS school, and although the pro-style offense, he played in the pro-style offense, which is something I think will really help him, the speed of the game is really going to take a big jump. So I really think that they're going to be cautious with how they handle him, because if they put him in this season, it's really not going to be to go win a division. I mean, it's really just going to be for him to get some experience. So I think, if anything, they're just thinking about it in terms of protecting the long-term investment that they made.
Yeah, and, I believe the Eagles when they say they don't want to play Wentz. I think what they have done indicates that. I think a lot of other teams, like with the example we gave, Chad Henne, there's no expectations for that team to win. So, therefore, if they pull Chad Henne, the Jacksonville Jaguars, all they're doing is getting their asset on the field a little faster. I do think the Eagles are in a little different spot, but the question really is, when does this team feel pressure? Because, let's be honest, Josh, Bradford's not going to have a whole heck of a lot of support when he enters this season.
Yeah, but one thing I'm also curious about is, we're assuming that if Bradford goes out, that means Wentz goes in. But I think it's pretty clear how much Doug Peterson likes Chase Daniel and how much they want Wentz to sit. So if Bradford, if something happens with him, if he gets hurt, if they want to bench him for whatever reason, I don't think it's out of the question that Chase Daniel goes in to replace him instead of Carson Wentz. So you can have a guy who knows the offense, who can kind of be that stopgap for you while you still have your number 2 pick waiting in the wings, getting adjusted to not just the system but the NFL as a whole.
Josh Paunil's with us here, PhillyMag.com. Birds 24/7 taking a look at the Eagles. And, of course, yesterday, Sam Bradford comes back. Now, did you read into his statement at all? Is this him putting his tail between his legs? Did he concede? Does he know he's wrong? Or is there more to come when he speaks on the 17th, or when he is supposed to speak on the 17th? Or do you think that statement is it? He wants to get past this. He knows he was, in the wrong, and let's just move on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's going to be any surprises when we finally have access to him in his first public availability again. He's always been a guy that, says the right things in public, who isn't trying to stir the pot. And so even if he thinks he was in the right and he thinks the Eagles are in the wrong, I don't think he would say such a thing. I think he's just going to say, okay, I put out a statement. All I missed was a few voluntary days. I'm just trying to get back with my teammates, get on the same page with them. So I think I really think he's just going to say all the right things. He's not really going to say anything that will stir the pot or make this, an even bigger or more drawn-out story.
So, Josh, now that the Sam Bradford situation is over for now, who would you assign blame to for the whole episode? Would it be Bradford? Would it be Condon? No one? Who would you pick in that? Because I had a guy say to me today, boy, his agent really screwed up. Well, I think he told his agent what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it would be more on Bradford than Condon, because, first of all, the agent, works for the player. And Tom Condon, he's a good agent. He's a smart guy. He's not going to do make this situation. I don't think that he would approach the situation as he did without Sam Bradford's direction. That really wasn't how Tom Condon typically handles those types of deals. I really think it was just Sam Bradford saying, I want to get out of here. Just do whatever it takes to get me out of here. So Tom Condon was kind of acting under the directive from Sam Bradford. But it's, one thing that I think has been interesting is Jeffrey Lurie, after Chip Kelly got fired, Jeffrey Lurie was talking about how important emotional intelligence is and how, the next coach really needs to understand, how his players are going to feel and react. And I thought it was interesting, not necessarily not blaming Howie Roseman, but it didn't exactly show the most emotional intelligence that Jeffrey Lurie said was so important with how Howie Roseman and Sam Bradford and how the situation unfolded. I don't know if Howie Roseman anticipated Sam Bradford to react that way, but I can't imagine he anticipated Sam Bradford to be happy about the trade up. So that was one thing that I thought was kind of interesting with Jeffrey Lurie's focus on emotional intelligence and how maybe that applied to Howie Roseman and Sam Bradford.
And how do you think this affects Sam Bradford in the room with his fellow receivers and his fellow players?
I really don't think it's going to affect him at all. I mean, players are much more sympathetic to the fellow players. I really think that they're going to look at this as a business decision, and all he missed was voluntary days. He didn't miss even that many voluntary days in the grand scheme of things. He's back. I mean, he's going to have a lot more time with his teammates this offseason than he did last offseason because of his recovery that he was going through. So I really don't think it's going to affect him at all with his teammates because, again, they're always going to be much more lenient and side with one of their own than, the team and management because that's one of their guys.
Josh Paunil's with us here. Sam Bradford back with the Eagles, and Carson Wentz, of course, everybody's going to be waiting for him now and to see when the Eagles, because I think even if you were a Bradford supporter, I think you're now intrigued by the other guy. I mean, that's kind of human nature, but the way that Bradford did this, even if you say, you know what, I would like, if you were saying, you know what, I'm willing to give Bradford the year. Let's see, his last 7 games or 6 games or 5 games, or whatever you want to say, sample size. He played pretty well. I was willing to give him another year. I think you're so now intrigued by the other guy that it almost doesn't give him a fair shot, even if you were a supporter of Bradford, and you wonder, yeah, there's a couple of guys coming out, Matthews, Barwin most notably, but do you think there's going to be a split divide, or do you think legitimately most guys know and want Bradford to be the guy because they know he's the best guy right now?
Well, among the players, I definitely think there's going to be an overwhelming support for Bradford just in terms of being the quarterback this year. And again, unless he does something, off the field, he seems, discontent or disinterested in the locker room during practice. As long as he makes the same effort that he did last year as a leader, I think he's going to be fine. The only real situation I can imagine guys in the locker room possibly turning against him or something of that nature is if, he doesn't, really try to take the reins. If Carson Wentz is just really a guy that they feel like they can rally behind and he's really just lighting it up in preseason and practice. But I think it's going to be unlikely that Bradford doesn't have the support of his teammates, at least in terms of 2016. Now, not the 2016, that's a whole nother discussion, but just in terms of 2016, I think his teammates will be happy with him at the helm.
There was a lot of speculation that Sam Bradford's team thinks that the Eagles kind of misled them, lied to them, that they were kind of led down a path to sign a contract that maybe they wouldn't have signed. At this stage of the game, do you think that that's something that's a possibility? The way that Bradford acted, now knowing and seeing everything that happened and the way he kind of came back, do you feel that Bradford did this because he felt deceived, or that basically, because there's a lot of people, Josh, and it kind of bothers me a little bit, to be honest with you, that think this guy doesn't want to compete. And I can't imagine that he's like afraid to compete. I think he just knows, that, hey, there's not much I can do to win this job. There's a lot I can do to lose this job. I don't know if he's afraid to compete. I think he just knows he's not going to get a fair shot.
Yeah, I definitely think that he may be feeling that he was misled. But kind of my take on that is that money talks. And I don't really care what they said to you, what they were saying when they were negotiating a contract. Hey, we love you. We want you to be back. We want you to be our are quarterback for the long haul. If a team signs you to a deal they can get out of after one season, then you should know that they really aren't that committed to you. They aren't that invested in you. They don't think, or they aren't that sold that you can be the long-term solution. So I would understand, maybe they said things to him in their private meetings that indicated that he thought he would be their franchise guy long-term. But when they sign you to a deal that they can get out of after one season, I just don't think that you can be that surprised that they would go out and try to find another quarterback who they think would have a better shot at being their long-term solution.
Yeah, and I guess, he's reading into that of, hey, and it depends. Look, this is all hearsay of how they presented it to him, but, hey, we like you, we believe in you, but you have been hurt. The sample size has been too small, Sam. We're going to give you a lot of money because we do believe in you, but we're going to cut down the years because we still need to see a little bit more. Did they, could that have been something that they agreed upon? And Sam said, you know what? I have been hurt, and, I did get through 14 games last year, but, yeah, I do need to show you more. You're giving me a lot of money, and that you're giving me a prove-it type of deal, which now turned into a bridge type of deal.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's a possibility that that's how they presented the deal to him. But in my mind, and obviously it's very unlikely that Bradford's back after 1 year, but my thing is if Sam Bradford plays very well, he plays like a franchise quarterback, I mean, first of all, that decreases the chance that they would get rid of him. But also, more importantly in my mind, I think what Sam Bradford really wants is just to be a long-term solution anywhere. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily I have to play for the Eagles, I have to be their franchise quarterback. I think Sam Bradford just wants long-term security somewhere. So even though the Eagles bring in Carson Wentz, if you play well this year, if you even play, kind of well, you could be a long-term solution viewed from another franchise. And I think the Eagles, that's what the Eagles are hoping for, is that Sam Bradford, I think that's part of the reason that he's going to have a long leash, is because they're really going to try to put him out there, help him play as well as he can, not just so they can compete, but so they can recruit some of the value in the picks that they lost when they traded up and got Wentz. I mean, if you can have Bradford play pretty well and get a second-round pick for him in return, I mean, that's a win at the end of the day for you.
Josh Paunil with us, Birds 24/7. Josh, is it fair to question Sam Bradford's competitiveness?
That's a good question. And to be honest with you, I really can't say definitively one way or the other because I don't know whether he's acting like this mainly because he doesn't think he can win against Wentz in the competition, or just if he feels like he was hurt by this. I mean, I definitely think that there's the side where he could just be personally hurt. And, I mean, I think it's debatable whether he should, be hurt by this or not. But I do think it's a possibility that it's not really about his competitiveness, but just about his frustration that he may have felt misled. And, again, maybe he shouldn't feel misled, but even if he does, then that wouldn't really give you reason to question his competitiveness if he feels like he was, lied to, or if he thought that he would have much more of a chance to be the Eagles' long-term answer than he now has.
Yeah, and one of the things that you go back and forth on, and again, this is all semantics, is if he was presented these things at the time, did his agent ask the right questions? Would he have signed if the Eagles gave him any glimmer that they would do this? And of course, I don't think we'll ever find that out. But that being said, he is here. Wentz is here. Daniel's here. They have three quarterbacks. What is very odd, and we talked to Andrew Brand about this yesterday, that he said he's worked in the NFL front offices, worked on contracts. He's never seen a situation happen where a team invested so much money in a position in free agency or re-signing their own and then also drafted that same position. So do you feel that this Bradford, Wentz, Daniel with a new coach situation really is something unique?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely different. I mean, it really could. It obviously has potential of, maybe blowing up in their face would be going too far, but really backfiring if the locker room is just, if it gets kind of toxic in the locker room between Bradford and Wentz and Chase Daniel just sitting there between them. But, in my view is, and this was what I was thinking when they traded up for Wentz, was if there's one position that you're going to go all in on and invest a ton of resources, it has to be quarterback. And so I understand why they invested so many resources at the quarterback position. I really think that this is kind of a directive from up top. Jeffrey Lurie, they need to find a franchise quarterback. I think Jeffrey Lurie was really pushing that this offseason. We need to find our guy. And so I think that's what led them to invest so much, whether it was re-signing, going and getting Chase Daniel free agency, trading up in the draft. So I think there was a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but a lot of kind of, we need to find our guy. You can't invest too much. Go get him. And this is kind of the result of it was a high-price backup, high-price stopgap, I guess, if you want to call him, and then obviously a very high-price draft pick to give up the picks that you did. So and it definitely is a unique situation, though. I think that's without a doubt.
Josh, how about some of these undrafted rookies? Are there any interesting names to watch when they report on Friday?
Yeah, one person I'm curious about is Mike Tavares. He's a small school guy. It's really tough to tell the talent level just because of the level of competition he played against. But the reason why I'm curious about him is just because linebacker is a position where they got Joe Walker in the 7th round, but it's not like they went and got a bunch of linebackers. And obviously linebacker, I mean, they just need numbers at linebacker. It's not even about finding starters. They just need numbers. Linebacker is just a position where they just don't have a ton of guys at. So he's a guy that has the athleticism, the measurables. So he's a guy I'm curious to see. Bruce Johnson, the center from Maine, he's another similar situation where how good is he really when he's going up against the level of competition he was? But he really has that grit, that attitude, that nastiness that Doug Peterson wants. And I think that's really going to be really interesting to see who makes this roster because Doug Peterson has been very clear with the type of offensive lineman he wants. He wants guys that are going to get after it, that are going to be nasty, aggressive. And so I think Bruce Johnson fits that mold. And, there's always going to be, one or two, maybe even three undrafted free agents that make the roster or go to practice squad. And a lot of times it's guys you don't expect. I don't think anyone thought Denzel Rice would be the guy that made it last year. So I think it's really going to be interesting to see these small school guys in particular, how they fare. But you also have Byron Marshall, the running back / receiver from Oregon. He's a really versatile player. You can use him in kind of a couple of different ways. So he's another guy. I'm just interested to see what position they have him at because he's a real versatile player that can fill a few different roles for you.
How about Ja'Cory Shepherd? He was a hot name last year in camp before injury.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to be one of the most interesting position battles. I think you got left guard, but then also that nickel corner spot because that's the position where they have, several guys who could really be their starting guy there. You have, Leotis McKelvin possibly if he's not one of the two starting outside corners. You have the draft picks, Blake Countess, Jalen Mills. Both of those guys can play corner or safety. Both of them have also been mentioned as guys that could fit particularly well, at least early on in their career, at nickel cornerback. So I think, and then obviously Ja'Cory Shepherd. So, that's four guys right there at least that have a solid chance of, being that nickel corner. So I think that and left guard are going to be two of the most interesting position battles that the Eagles have this year.
Josh Paunil's with us, Rookies Report on Friday, and they're the undrafted guys. How about some of the guys not named Wentz? Because we know that he's probably not going to make a lot of an impact this year, but maybe two guys of the drafted list that could be making an impact as rookies. Because last year, quite frankly, the only guy who really made an impact was Hicks. Aguilar and Rowe were kind of inconsistent at best. Hicks got hurt. Other than that, the rookie class last year didn't give him too much. So will this class this year, do you think there's one or two guys that can give a little bit more of an impact than last year's class?
Well, the two guys that I would bet on having the biggest impact, at least as rookies, are Isaac Seumalo, the guard. And really, he's not just a guard. He played center, guard, and tackle in college. So he's a guy that, even if he doesn't win that left guard position, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you have one or two guys on the offensive line get injured. So when you start scrambling your guys around the offensive line, is he going to be someone you plug in because he's so versatile? He can play multiple positions. So Isaac Seumalo, the 3rd-round pick. And then Jalen Mills, the defensive back that they got in the 7th round, he's a guy that people had as a 2nd or 3rd-round type talent, but an injury and off-the-field question to really dropped his stock. That's why the Eagles were able to get him in the 7th round. He's a guy that if he's able to stay healthy, stay out of trouble, I would definitely bet on him not only making the roster, but possibly contributing in some type of way just because of the talent he has. But again, it's the injury and the off-the-field questions that really plagued him and hurt him in the draft.
Follow Josh at Josh Paunil on Twitter for more Eagles. Go to PhillyMag.com and Birds 24/7 for all the Eagles off-season news. By the way, Bruce Johnson from Maine. I don't know anything about the guy. Just sounds like a guy that 15 years later you'd be like, that guy Bruce Johnson
Right,
really
he was
defied
really
the odds.
talented, yeah.
You know, Maine, Bruce Johnson. That's a great center's name.
Exactly. Gritty names, get after. I mean, you can just imagine him now. Getting some good stats in this year.
All right, for more from Josh, check out at Josh Paunil on Twitter. Thanks, pal.
Thanks for having me, guys.